Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Elly and I'm a professional dancer with Ballet Pforzheim. Today I'm going to show you how I customize and break in a new pair of pointe shoes. The lifespan of my pointe shoes really depends on what I'm dancing in them. If I'm rehearsing and performing 1 or 2 different productions on pointe shoes, my pointe shoes will last me approximately 2 to 3 days. If I'm only taking class on them every single day, my pointe shoes will last me 2 to 3 weeks. And if, like now, I'm alternating a ballet class with a contemporary class, my pointe shoes will actually last me 1 to 2 months. Pointe shoes are the only shoes which will allow you to go over your toes and feel fully supported dancing there. The first prototype of pointe shoes made its appearance in the 19th century when Marie Taglioni performed in La Sylphide on pointe shoes. They were invented to convey a sense of lightness and give an ethereal quality to the dancer, giving the illusion of flying or of being suspended mid-air. I have done a rough calculation and I estimate that I have gone through approximately 110 pairs of pointe shoes in my dance career so far. Considering that it takes me around an hour and a half to fully customize my pointe shoes, that means that I have spent 165 hours, which is almost an entire week, breaking in and sewing new pairs of pointe shoes. Here is what I use to customize my pointe shoes. Dental floss, scissors, pincers, a needle, a lighter, a Stanley knife, ribbons, elastics, and a pen. So the first thing I personally like doing when I start customizing my pointe shoes is that I pick a right and a left shoe. Pointe shoes don't come with a right and left side, so it is really up to the dancer to decide if they're going to pick a right and a left shoe or if they're going to keep swapping the shoes around. Once I've decided which pointe shoe is going to be my right shoe and which one is going to be my left shoe, I personally like ungluing the shank and removing the nail that is underneath the heel. I do that because I like 3/4ing my pointe shoes, and that will simplify the process once I'm breaking in the pointe shoes. The next step for me would be sewing on the ribbons. Some dancers like using satin ribbons, other dancers like using elastic ribbons, but I personally like using ribbons that are something in between. The ribbons that I use are satin ribbons, but they do have a 10 centimeters insert of elastic some way along the length. In order to find the right spot on which to sew the ribbons, I would normally fold the heel of the pointe shoe like this, and then grab my pen and mark the spot in which the heel folds on top of the pointe shoe. That is the spot in which I'm going to sew on the ribbons. I like using floss instead of thread to sew on my ribbons and my elastics because I find floss to be way more sturdy and way more cost effective than thread is. So I just finished sewing on the ribbons and the inside of the shoe now looks like this. And this is the outside. So the next step for me would be sewing on my elastics. I personally like using very sturdy elastics, but that is going to be different for every dancer. I know some dancers that don't like using elastics at all. The elastic I use is 1 meter long. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to cut it into 4 separate parts. The first thing I'll do with my elastics is that I'll sew 1 on each side of the middle seam of the heel. One thing that you should be super careful about once you're sewing your elastics, but actually also your ribbons on the pointe shoes, is to avoid catching the elastic drawstring that runs all around the edge of the pointe shoe. The function of the drawstring is to pull the shoe together, allowing your foot to be fully enwrapped as if it were a hand in a glove. So be careful not to sew on it, otherwise you're going to hinder this process and you might have to unsew everything that you've sewed and start the process again. So this is how the inside of the pointe shoe looks like once I'm done sewing the elastics. I will then pop on my pointe shoes and crisscross the elastics to see how much of the elastics I actually need. I'll leave out a part like this. So I will cut it out and I do the same on the other side. I like to sew on my elastics in that particular area because that is where the highest part of my arch falls on the shoe. This of course is different for every single person as we all have different shapes of feet and different arches. Okay, so the sewing part is basically over. I've sewn on my ribbons, I've sewn on my elastics, And what I have to do now is to pop on my toe pad. I'll put my pointe shoe on, tighten the drawstring, knot it up so that my foot will sit perfectly in the pointe shoe every time I'm dancing on it. So this is how the pointe shoe looks like now. Now it's time for me to start breaking in my pointe shoes. I don't know if you guys have ever had a chance to watch the prepping the pointe shoe scenes from the 2000s movie Center Stage, but that is basically exactly what I'm going to start doing now. I remember watching that scene and being so completely enraptured by it. There were many ballerinas doing so many different, weird and fascinating things to their pointe shoes, and at the time I honestly had no clue what was going on. I was just really drawn to that scene. Now I know that they were actually just breaking in their pointe shoes, and now I'm going to show you how I personally break in my pointe shoes. So the first thing I do is I create some tread on the bottom of my pointe shoes by gently cutting the soles of my shoes with a Stanley knife. I ever so gently slice diagonally across the soles of my pointe shoes, creating a crisscross pattern that will improve the friction of the shoe and make the sole less slippery. The next thing I'll do, still focusing on the bottom of the pointe shoe, is to shave off the outer edges of the soles of the pointe shoe. I do that because the bottom of the pointe shoe is actually not as flat as you'd want it to be. And if you look at the soles from the side, you'll notice that it's actually quite thick, which allows for a lot of unwanted movement when you're trying to balance or stand flat on them. So by shaving off the outer edges of the soles of the pointe shoes, I actually managed to get rid of this extra wobbliness, and I feel way more grounded when I'm dancing in them. The next thing I'll do to improve the hold that my shoe has on the floor is I'll remove the satin from the platform of the pointe shoe. I'll do that with the help of a Stanley knife and a pair of scissors, and then I'll burn the outer edges of the satin with a lighter to prevent the satin from fretting. So now we'll move over to my living room so that I can show you how I finished breaking in my pointe shoes. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how I 3/4 my pointe shoes. What I'll do is that I'll pop on my pointe shoes with the toe pads that I'm going to be dancing in, and I'm going to look for the spot that is right underneath my heel, just about here, because this is exactly where I want my pointe shoes to fully support me. So what I'll do once I found that spot is I'll take off my pointe shoes and I'll gently start rolling down the heel in order to soften the pointe shoes exactly where I want them to. That will not only help me feel safe and supported when dancing, but it will also help me get the best possible line that I can attain in my pointe shoes. So you can already see how the pointe shoe looks now that I've 3/4 it. This is the pointe shoe after 3/4 it, and this is the pointe shoe before 3/4 it. So you can really tell the difference, and you can already start imagining how differently it will fit on my foot. So now that I've 3/4 my pointe shoes, I'll move on to soften the demi-pointe. I'll do that by placing both of my thumbs inside the shoe, placing the shoe on the floor, and gently lifting towards the back. This will allow me to inform the shoe to soften exactly where my demi-pointe is, which will really allow me to roll up and down the shoe every time I'm dancing on pointe shoes. Although, as you can see, I am already dancing in XXX shoes, I really like for my box to be wide. So what I'll do is I'll stand with my heel on the box in order to widen it a little bit more. So I've only stood on it for approximately 5 seconds, but you can already see how the shape has changed. Okay, so now I'm going to proceed to banging my pointe shoes. That is probably the most common image that people have when they're thinking of dancers breaking in their pointe shoes. The reason why we do that is because a pointe shoe just out of the box, which these are, even if I've sewn them, I still haven't danced in them, is this. It is a very loud sound, and as you can imagine, that is not the sound that you want to hear dancers have when they're performing on stage. So that is why we bang the pointe shoes together in order to avoid to have that loud sound, and the sound will improve the more you bang them. The area of the pointe shoe that you want to bang is around the top of the sole of the shoe, because that is where you're going to land from jumps. So I'm going to make some noise. Here we go. It's a bit of a workout. Okay, let's see if the sound has improved. Yes, it's already changed, so it's less loud and acute. It's more softened. Alright, so there is one last thing that I'll do to break in my pointe shoes before I can feel fully ready to start dancing in them. What I'll do is that I'll pop them back on and I'll squat/sit in them for approximately 2 to 3 minutes. I do that to allow the shoe to fully mold to the shape of my foot and really sit snug against the sole of my feet every time I'm dancing in them. So that is all from me today. I really hope you enjoyed watching how I costumize, sew, and break in my pointe shoes. I surely enjoyed sharing this information with you guys. Please let me know if you liked this video, and if you did, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and to subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. I wish you all a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys in a future video. Bye!